Hello, you're watching BBC News. I'm Shaun Ley with the latest headlines. Boris Johnson has described his party's performance in England's local elections on Thursday as following a tough night. The Conservatives lost more than 330 council seats. Labour took 3 long-time Conservative councillors in London, but has made limited progress elsewhere. The Liberal Democrats made significant gains across England, more from other parties in a moment. And we also hear from a pollster from IPSOS who's going to give us his take on the election results. First, though, let's hear from the Prime Minister when he spoke to reporters earlier today from his constituency in West London.
I mean, this has been a tough night for Conservatives in some parts of the country, and in other parts of the country we're actually moving forward. And so for midterm, it's quite interesting that it's a mixed set of results. And I think the lesson that I take is that, you know, and you rightly quote the views from the doorstep, but the lesson is we've got to get on with the stuff that matters to people. We've got to keep delivering on our agenda.
England results are still coming in, but Labour has taken 3 symbolic London councils from the Conservatives. Labour leader Keir Starmer congratulated party members in Barnet, one of those areas of London once represented by Margaret Thatcher. He said the results were evidence that the Labour Party had changed.
This is a massive turning point for the Labour Party. From the depths of 2019, we're back on track now for the general election, showing what the change that we've done, the hard change we've done in the last 2 years, what a difference it has made. And, you know, Cumberland, very important win last night in key constituencies for the next general election. Same in Southampton. Many more results to come today. But I just want to thank our brilliant team.
The SNP has finished as the largest party in Scotland's local elections. Labour beat the Conservatives into second place. That's the first time in 6 years.
Well, I'm thrilled at the SNP result. I mean, it is a quite incredible outcome. You know, we have not only won the election, I think our 8th consecutive election victory since I've been leader of the SNP, but we've won it overwhelmingly. I think we're going to end up about 12 to 13 percentage points ahead of our nearest rival. We've increased our share of the vote, we've increased the number of councillors that we've won, and I think we're going to be the largest party in more councils than was the case going into the election. Now, all of that would be a fantastic result for any party in any circumstances, but the SNP has been in government in Scotland now for 15 years, and this result says that people across Scotland, while they absolutely recognise that the SNP is not perfect, no party, no government is, they trust the SNP and have faith in the SNP to lead the country forward at national and, crucially, at local level.
That was Nicola Sturgeon talking to Lindsay Bewes a little earlier. Well, the Liberal Democrats have gained more than 190 council seats in all across England. Speaking in Taunton, where the Lib Dems have taken control of the new Somerset Unitary Authority, party leader Sir Ed Davey voiced his delight to supporters.
What began as a tremor in Cheshire and Amersham became an earthquake in North Shropshire. And with our victories in Westmoreland and Furness, and our victories here in Somerset, it's now become a political shockwave that could bring down this appalling Conservative government. It's the movement of millions of people, and they're saying they've had enough. They've had enough of rising energy bills and food bills and rising unfair Tory taxes. They've had enough of filthy sewage being allowed to be pumped into our rivers and lakes. They've had enough of ambulance delays and not being able to get a GP appointment because there are too few doctors. They've had enough of being taken for granted. And they've had enough of this law-breaking, lying Prime Minister.
The Green Party has made progress, gaining 60 seats in all. Its deputy leader, Annelies Womack, said the party was benefiting from voters questioning traditional allegiances.
We are proving that we're building our foundations. We're chipping away at the Conservative vote there. We are, as I said, taking votes from Labour and Conservatives because people are looking for that integrity in politics that they see that they can get with the Green Party.
All right.
So yes, we are building in Conservative areas like in Suffolk and making sure that we are showing what Green representation can do there.
Amelia Womack from the Green Party. Well, Keiran Pedley is Director of Politics at the market research and consulting firm IPSOS. Keiran, thanks very much for being with us. With the caveat that this isn't entirely a national election, because some areas of England didn't vote, although all of Scotland and Wales did vote, what can we deduce from the results we've seen so far?
So good evening. I think it's very important just to stress that point, which is that these are local elections rather than a general election. Turnout's usually much lower at local elections. You've pointed out that not everywhere voted, and our polling does show that people take into account local issues like the bins, like potholes, as well as national issues when they're voting in local elections. That said, these are real votes, and therefore we can learn a bit from them. I think what we've seen now as we start to approach the time when all of the votes are tallied is that it's a pretty bad night for the Conservatives. Across Great Britain as a whole, so England, Scotland and Wales combined, we're seeing that the Conservatives have lost almost 500 council seats, and their projected national share of the vote has fallen around 5 points from the last time these seats were contested in a mixture of 2017 and 2018, depending on which country you're talking about. So it's a really challenging night for the Conservatives, which reflects some of the problems that they've had with cost of living, with Partygate and other things in the recent past. At the same time, when we're looking for clues as to what might happen in the future, Labour do seem to be standing still somewhat, at least in terms of national vote share. And it was a positive night for the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. So it's a mixed picture. It'll take us time to unpick things, but I think a difficult night for the Conservatives.
Projected national share of the vote, which is the nearest equivalent people can make of if there were a general election tomorrow and these results were replicated, puts Labour in first place. But is it far enough ahead to start to feel confident about a general election that could be, 2.5 years away?
There's 2 points to make there. One, in terms of how far ahead Labour are. I mean, there are a range. If you take the projected national vote share from yesterday at face value, there are a range of potential possibilities, when a general election comes, ranging from a reduced Conservative majority right through to a hung parliament where Labour might be the largest party. But at the same time, these are local elections. The general election is years away. And I think how each party is seen to adapt to the key challenges the country faces, be that the cost of living, be that Russia's invasion of Ukraine, of other issues too, are going to be what dictates what happens next. There is no set trajectory from where we are today versus where we are at a general election. That makes a general election very unpredictable for the reasons that I've given. But certainly Labour will feel like they can be competitive at the next general elections. Now, obviously, their chance to show it.
Let's talk a bit about the rest of the UK. We've dealt with the English results because we pretty much have all those. We have all the results now in Scotland, where their voting system meant none of the councils were coming into this election held by any individual party. What's the picture looking like now?
So I think the first thing that's striking is just how resilient the SNP vote is in Scotland. I think that they'll be very pleased with their performance yesterday. And I think the other thing to look at is how is the balance of the relationship between the Conservatives and Labour. So now Labour in second place in Scotland. And this all has potential ramifications at a future Westminster election, of course, a future general election, vis-a-vis the picture between Labour and the Conservatives. But also it has ramifications for the SNP's continued strength in Scotland, and of course the debate there about independence and a future referendum. So I think steady as she goes to some extent for the SNP, but that second place is also important too.
The Conservatives had a good run in Wales, particularly under David Cameron's leadership. How are things looking for them now?
So in Wales, I think what we're starting to see is the reversal of some of the swing towards the Conservatives away from Labour that we saw when these local council seats were last up in 2017 in Wales rather than 2018 in England. Again, this is a place where all the seats, every seat counts, as it were. I think it was around a swing of 6 seats in the last general election towards the Conservatives. So I guess if this trend from the local elections were to continue at a general election, that obviously raises the prospect again of Labour gaining seats on the Conservatives next time. But of course, we'll have to wait and see how things play out.
Keiran Pedley, Director of Politics at IPSOS, thank you very much. To Northern Ireland now, where Sinn Féin has won the most first preference votes. The Democratic Union is coming second. There's still, though, a lot of counting to do. Live to Anita McVeigh, who's in Belfast. Anita, as yet, you've still got quite a night ahead of you.
Yeah, well, we're almost 14 hours in, Shaun. Not that we're counting, of course, but actually there is still a very long way to go. By my calculations, last time I looked a few seconds ago, 34 of the 90 seats had been declared. So we're a little over a third of the way into that total number of MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, the Stormont power sharing government, that have to be elected in this vote. Quite a way to go. Let me just give you a tally. Sinn Féin, that's the Nationalist Party that wants to see a united Ireland, on 16. The Cross Community Alliance Party on 7. The Democratic Unionist Party, of course, against the protocol, the Northern Ireland Protocol that governs post-Brexit trading arrangements here. They're on 6. The Ulster Unionist Party on 3. The SDLP Party on 1, and 1 independent elected so far. Well, joining me now is Colin McGrath from the SDLP, who's standing in the constituency of South Down, to get a little bit of insight into what's going on. So, Colin, I was explaining earlier in the day to viewers that the system of voting here is a form of proportional representation called the single transferable vote. Just explain for us where your count is at and how that vote works.
Well, of course, the single transferable vote is never a simple process to explain to people. It's taken me many years to try and work out how it actually takes place. But essentially, everybody gets their first preference votes and they're counted. And then if you reach a quota, you get elected. If you have any left over, it's distributed around the other numbers on your ballot paper. And then you just keep going through that process of eliminating people or the surpluses until people reach that quota. That can take some time. As you've mentioned, we're 14 hours in at this stage. I think my legs are just about working at the stage to keep me standing. It looks like we're going to maybe finish in a couple of hours because we won't have got through all of those stages and we will have to come back tomorrow. So I was hoping with my own count, which is currently at its 3rd stage, that I might get past the quota line in maybe stage 4 or early in stage 5, but that might have to be tomorrow before I come back and get that.
But you are hopeful of being elected?
I am indeed, yes.
Overall then for the party, as I mentioned, 1 seat declared for the SDLP so far. Are you disappointed at this stage to have just 1 seat?
Well, yes, I would love to have loads of seats, but whenever people get elected, there's obviously 5 seats for each constituency, and it's when people reach that quota that they get elected. Quite often the sort of middle ground smaller parties tend to have to wait until later in the stages before they get elected. So I would say that probably later this evening or certainly into tomorrow, that seat count for us will rise substantially.
Your party leader, Colin Eastwood, was interviewed much earlier in the day, and he said that he thought perhaps the SDLP was suffering because nationalist voters who want to see a nationalist First Minister were choosing to give their first, perhaps second or even third preference votes to Sinn Féin rather than the SDLP. Do you think that's a factor?
Absolutely. I think that many people in the nationalist community want to see a nationalist First Minister, not least because of the way that the DUP have treated that position, where they have made many people in the nationalist community feel a little bit lesser, and they have used their power within that position to try and to use it as leverage in various negotiations, not least the fact that they walked out of government and said that because of the protocol, which is something that is negotiated between London and Brussels, they decided that they wanted to walk out of government here in Belfast. So there has been a lot of abuse of that position, and it has become a prize that nationalists want to see. So I have no doubt that a number of nationalist voters will have lent that support to Sinn Féin to see if they can get that position.
And of course Sinn Féin walked out of the previous assembly, didn't they, back in 2017. So a lot of people would look at politics here and say there's quite a lot of dysfunction, and so many people, I'm sure you've heard this, and all the politicians I've talked to say they've heard it on the doorsteps. People want politicians back at Stormont making decisions on the cost of living, how to tackle that crisis, on healthcare, on education and so on. So, I mean, how do you break this logjam?
That's a really sort of difficult question, because I mean, we could go back into Stormont on Monday. We will have a Sinn Féin First Minister, a DUP Deputy First Minister, but nothing has changed. The issues still remain. The issues that we had last week are still there. They won't be resolved with that change in designation of the lead roles. And what we need to do is actually form some form of stable executive that addresses those issues. During the election, my party went very strong on the day-to-day issues in terms of the cost of living, the crisis that we have in our health service, and dealing with issues like infrastructure and education. But obviously, people wanted to see that First Minister from a nationalist background, and that's what the motivation was. But we still have all of those problems next week and no guarantee that there will actually be an executive to deal with them.
Okay, Colin McGrath, thank you very much from the SDLP. And as Colin was suggesting earlier, it does look as though this count is going to wind up, we think, around 11 o'clock tonight, so in a little over an hour's time, and resume not just here in Belfast, but the other two count centres as well here in Northern Ireland, and resume tomorrow with still the bulk of the seats to be declared, Shaun.
Anita, how far is the constitutional question dominated this campaign?
That's a really good question, because you talk to some people and they say, look, this is all about actually the bread and butter issues. This is about the cost of living crisis. It's about healthcare and education, those topics I mentioned just a second ago. I spent the day talking to voters on Tuesday in Antrim, and no matter what background they were from, whether they were unionist or nationalist or neither, that was the dominant theme of the conversation. But you can't get away from the fact that the constitutional question is a huge one as well, and it looks like, as things are shaping up at the moment, but that may change, that the two largest parties at the end of this vote will be Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionist Party. So Sinn Féin wants a united Ireland. A little earlier I spoke to their leader, Mary Lou McDonald, and I asked her about a time frame for a border poll on Irish unity, and she said, I think there'll be a referendum within a decade. She said personally that she thought it could come in 5 years. And then you have the DUP, who have throughout this campaign said, vote for us, because if you don't vote for us, you're going to get a Sinn Féin First Minister and a border poll. And they clearly are very, very concerned about Northern Ireland's constitutional position within the UK. They feel that the Northern Ireland Protocol undermines Northern Ireland's position within the UK. So you could end up with the two largest parties being polar opposites on that constitutional position. But let me also add in that we've seen really significant successes in this election so far for the Centre Ground Party, the Alliance Cross-Community Party. So, Northern Ireland politics, it never fails to be interesting.
All long, Anita. I hope you get a good night's sleep tonight, back for it tomorrow. Anita McVeigh in Belfast, thanks very much. Now, in just a few moments, we're going to be joining viewers on BBC One for the 10 o'clock news presented by Sophie Rayworth. I'll be back in half an hour's time here with the papers. Join me and Daisy McAndrew and Ali Mirage. Now, though, time for a look at the weather. Here's Thomas Schaffenacker.
Good evening. The earlier rain across northern and western parts of the UK should largely fizzle out through the evening and overnight, and that means that the weekend should be generally dry, sunny spells, just a few showers in the forecast, I think, tomorrow. So here's the latest satellite picture as the weather front crossed the country and moved southwards. Here it is very early in the morning, and then I think by the middle of the day it should be out of the picture as high pressure builds in. So through the early hours, a few showers there in East Anglia and the southeast. Elsewhere across the country, it's a case of clearing skies, and our temperatures around 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, around 9 in Belfast, 7 in Glasgow, 13 degrees in London with that cloud and a few showers. Now the forecast indicates a fair bit of cloud across East Anglia and the southeast in the morning. It could hang around through the afternoon as well. Could be some showers. Showers also could develop from southern parts of Wales across the Pennines, just about into the Midlands. I think the best of the sunshine will be out towards the west, across Wales, southwestern parts of England. The higher temperatures here up to around 19 degrees or so. All in all, I think Saturday's going to be a mostly fine day. Here's Sunday. High pressure still in charge, but just starting to drift out towards the North Sea, and this low pressure makes inroads. So on Sunday, I think increasing amounts of cloud out towards the northwest. I think more than anything, it's hazy skies. Elsewhere, scattered fair weather clouds with light winds. Temperatures inland up to around 18 to 19. On the North Sea coast, a bit fresher there, closer to 14. Now here's Monday. That weather front really does push in across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, so some wet and breezy weather at times here. But across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, it's going to be a fine Monday with sunshine and quite warm too. Given some sunshine, temperatures could get up to around 21 degrees. Now here's an outlook for next week. Now you'll notice that the breeze is mostly coming off the Atlantic, so it's not going to be all that warm. Still temperatures probably in the high teens with just about 20 degrees across the south, but the thinking is that elsewhere across the country it will be a good deal cooler with frequent showers and breezy weather. Bye-bye.